Hey everybody, I probably should have worn a top that's not light gray because the thing that I'm about to review is also light gray. It's the latest LEGO Star Wars AT-ST. In addition to the walker, this comes with 3 minifigures and one of the best probe droids of all time, if not the best of any scale. We'll get back to that. First of all, I think it's very important to recognize and accept early on that this must not look like the AT-ST that we're used to from Endor, because that would be canonically incorrect and it would be inaccurate. This is not an Endor AT-ST. This is a Hoth AT-ST from Empire, and it's supposed to look different because it did look different in the movies. This is the walker that inspired the AT-DP in Rebels. Smaller head relative to the size of the legs, longer legs relative to the size of the head. So if this looks wrong to you, it's probably more your recollection than this. Check into the source material, really important. It's very easy for there to be a lot of misconceptions because of that. I think that this is decently close, looking at the reference material, decently close to the way that it should look proportion-wise. And the build of it is interesting. I generally am still unhappy with the legs for AT-STs from LEGO. They still are not able to get into a walking pose, even though from a physics perspective, there are challenges, but it would be possible. I'm certain that it would be possible to get something of this weight to get into a walking pose, but there just are no ankle joints to support the motion of the legs forward and back. So I mean, you've got this, right? You've got this. You can make that happen. If there was one click down here that I could make this go up, then I can make this really get into a safe walking pose. As it is, this is very scary. It wants to fall. It wants to fall. It will surely fall if the wind blows just a little bit, if I sneeze or something. The head of this does have the rotating mechanism, the remote rotating mechanism from the back, and there's no ratchet in it, so it does move around smoothly. It doesn't angle too far forward. It's just a little bit, but you can turn it side to side and it will stay in the position where you leave it. So you can at least leave it posed like that, and probably with a little bit of customization down here in the legs, or with a little stand underneath one of them, you could get it into a motion looking pose just for your own display's sake. The feet are built up a little bit differently from usual. They have a nice amount of detail and a suggestion of some slightly different hues in there. I don't mind the dark tan there. I think it makes sense for different types of dirts to have been kicked up onto this as it went through the dirty snow and dirty surface. But the blue axle pin bugs me as usual. I've talked about that at great length in the past. The legs being nice and thin is actually very good. It really helps with the appearance of the proportions, although it is unfortunate to have to see all of this Technic stuff here. And I think that an easy modification would be to just add some additional tiling on the outsides of these, just to cover up those holes, because you don't need to see that much mechanical detail, to kind of suggest the ligaments and tendons of the thing, the mechanical ligaments and tendons of the thing. I think that this is better texture right here. Just generally, I think that should have been carried through. The brown there works for me. The inner portion down here underneath, it's basically the hip section, that works for me. And if you look underneath here, there's a little bit of red right there. That's actually the spring-loaded shooter, which is actuated from the back as usual. You got the remote triggers right here, so you push that in to fire on either side. The back of this just generally looks pretty decent, but there are some gaps up in the corners. The level of greebling, I think, is pretty good. This is a really nice detail. I don't think we had this piece previously in the dark gray color. It's a relatively new piece on the whole. Got the launcher over on this side, the faux cannons on the front, which can be angled up and down together. This one does have always closed ports on it, so these flaps are not able to come up. I think that is also intended to be accurate based on the fast motion of these things across the ice and snow fields of Hoth. They would have had those closed up, although I don't know where they would look through. I didn't look into that. This cluster over here of cannons and blasters is actually pretty good, especially for its size. And it's appropriately set off away from the hull. It's not in too close. That was very satisfying to build up. There are still, again, more gaps around the edges here. It's not too bad. I wish it was just a little bit tighter. You can force it in a little bit tighter. The top part is definitely too rectangular, I feel. Would have been better using some of the newer wedge plate pieces, if at all possible, to get that to follow the edge just a little bit better. But it's not really bad. I do like this shape here, and I like the fact that the sides are angled in nicely, and I also like the bit of greebling here on the front, as well as these two shields underneath. Overall, it makes for a pretty good presentation. It's just not 100% collector level, that's for sure. On top, there is a hatch that is able to open up, so you can have an operator just sticking their head up there. And for our access to get into the front space, it's just the top that opens up. There is a clip here, a clip on the other side as well, so you can put minifig accessories there if you're very careful. And there's just a small printed console down in there and a very simple seat for a single operator, which works out fine and I think is reasonable for this reduced size of the entire head. The Viper Droid's my favorite thing in the set by far, just for the sake of comparison to the size of a minifigure there. It's scaled down quite a lot, although not too tiny, and the shaping of it is pretty dang accurate. Relatively new pieces really make all the difference here. This is very finicky though. I will say that this is even more finicky and easier to break apart on accident than the $60 large scale one. A lot of people have had trouble with the legs especially putting them together. Well, first of all, you can easily misalign these top bits, which are just like done at 4 corners. So a little bit of pushing on that and it becomes all off in its angle. And then also these individual segments down here pull off fairly easy if you're trying to pose around the arms. These will loosen up. That one's actually not loosening up. Oh, there we go. Wasn't loosening up immediately, but in just messing around with it, and even during assembly, these corner segments were coming off a little bit easily. But gosh, does it look good. And if you just want to be careful with that, just move it around from its base, because it does have the base included with the clear stand up the middle. Each of the legs has a slightly different look, and just overall, I think this is a fantastic miniature model. The figures are left to right. The new Hoth ATST driver in the center is just a Hoth Rebel Trooper, unnamed, I believe. And on the right is the latest variation of Chewbacca. I think the ATST driver looks pretty excellent, with one exception. Down here, the legs, which are light gray, are printed with a little bit of white across the top, and that white just is not opaque enough. You can clearly see the contrast between the hip piece down the center and the white to the sides there. It's supposed to be the same or at least close. Otherwise, though, the production is pretty good. The goggles printed onto the helmet there are pretty good. Happy with that. In the center, that Hoth Rebel Trooper, again, just randomized with the white backpack, looks perfectly fine. I'm personally still happy with the headgear piece that they came up with some time ago. And of course, you can take off just the goggle piece, and you can also, of course, attach that up to the top, which was a clever little design. It definitely works. That's probably the best look right there. And Chewbacca, meanwhile, is just a standard modern Chewbacca with a little extra white added to him. So they just changed up the print, adding a little bit of white on him. And with that, I don't mind the fact that it's not 100% opaque, because it's just supposed to be, little bits of the white on him from snow, little bits of snow dusting. Could have had a little bit more, especially down towards the legs. I think that Mega Constructs got that right with some of their Target exclusive figures back in the day, where they would have a nice gradient from lots of speckling of white down, then you would just kind of go up a little bit and fade into the standard. But not bad. Good prints around the backs on all of these. Alternate face, I was very happy to see right there. Alternate face here as well. Of course, nothing else for Chewbacca. There's a better look at that back print on that torso. And one final look around the front. Of course, the bowcaster for Chewbacca is able to actually fire, which is good. Finally, here's a look at the leftover pieces, as well as the intentionally extra bolt for the shooter, extra studs for, well, at least one of those studs is intentionally extra for the bowcaster, and I forgot to show you there's one of these in white. So I paid $50, 50, for this set, US. And it's got 586 pieces. More of those pieces than usual are small. I do feel like this kind of fits into or comes from the same initiative that Lego has had going for a little while now of shrinking down the overall size, overall mass of Star Wars vehicles that have been getting unnecessarily large and expensive. And I've really liked that trend overall, or that push, because it's led to some slightly scaled down craft and vehicles and such that are still very good and that are much cheaper than previous versions. With this, I feel similar to the way that I did with the Boba Fett, the most recent Boba Fett ship. For the price, this actually feels a little bit low on mass. And this head right here it's really tiny. It's really tiny. It scales just fine. It works just fine with a single figure and everything, but I really would have preferred to see this sold at $40 US. That would have been a comfortable price for me. 50 isn't too much of a stretch given its complexity, and that droid really helps to add a lot of value here. The minifig selection is very respectable. Again, I wish that there was better printing on the legs over here. But you know what really would have made me feel comfortable with the $50 price tag? Just the ability to comfortably put this into a walking pose where I'm not worried that it's about to fall over. Look at this. It's just... no. Okay, a little bit better, but it's also leaning way over to one side. There he goes. If they could just come up with a way to get a good ratcheting joint, even if there's just one more position down here, just something at the ankle to allow this to, for the first time, go into a walking pose, or at least the first time since the first ATST that they ever did at minifig scale, I would be willing to easily pay a premium for that. Overall, this is a pretty good effort. That's the star. Minifigs are good. Level of detail, pretty decent. There are some quirks here. Hate the blue axle pins, but all in all, it's not bad. It's definitely not the ATST that most of us are looking for, though. For what it is, kind of looks about right. Let me know what your thoughts are, though, down in the comments, and I'll talk to you soon.